Do you wish you could let go and lean into your fears more often? Or do you compare yourself to others with greater confidence and wonder if you'll ever have that in your life when you often feel like such a failure? If this is you, today's episode will really resonate with you because Karen Manthey, our guest speaker today, shares some simple ways that we can develop self-confidence and become our best selves. I promise you, you are going to love it. She is a beautiful human being and a dear friend, and I'm so excited to have her on the show. Stay tuned. Hey parents, welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. Do you want to raise your kids better and have a stronger marriage? Are you up late at night researching marriage and parenting tools and self-care tips? Do you start each day hoping for deeper connections and less chaos, but it ends with family arguments and going 12 different directions again? My name's Kendra, wife, mom, therapist, and growth enthusiast. It wasn't until I discovered how to fulfill my unmet needs that I was finally able to show up as my best self as a spouse and parent. I realized that by meeting my needs, I could more fully meet the needs of my family with more energy and less resentment. In this podcast, I teach parents skills like boundary setting, prioritizing personal needs, communication, and claiming ownership. Just like my clients, you'll be shocked by the improvement in your marriage, parenting, and personal life when you focus on fulfilling your important unmet needs. Ready to prioritize yourself so you can quit mentally throat punching people? Then grab those earbuds and head outside, and let's rock and talk. Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy. Today we have a special guest, Karen Manthey, on today to visit with us about, well, a little bit of everything, which we'll go into in just a minute. But I want to first and foremost thank you for being here, Karen. We're so excited to talk to you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm excited to be here.
Well, let me give you a little bit of your background before I turn it over to you. But Karen has been a professional improviser, a teacher, and trainer, I feel like so many things, for more than 20 years. And she currently works in Idaho with corporate and nonprofit organizations on public speaking and communication leadership skill building as a private consultant and is the artistic director, this sounds so amazing, and vice president of Comedy Sports Boise. And that's a nonprofit that helps strengthen and build confidence in families and individuals through the art of improvisation.
Yep.
So she lives in Meridian, Idaho right now, and she's been married for 23 years and has 4 amazing kids. And she said a silly dog who keeps her on her toes, which I do love your dog and your amazing kids and your husband as well. So that is an impressive little, what do we call it, synopsis of your life right now. I was actually trying to remember all the things that you've done, and we were just talking about that. You've done a lot of stuff in your life, and it's amazing.
I have. I've had a lot of, I actually made a list of the different jobs that I've had in my life, and they're all so random and different. And, I've done everything from pest control sales when I was, in college and fire and water damage restoration. And I've done, just a lot of, I feel like I have a lot of well-rounded experience.
Didn't you even do some sort of something in Alaska? What was it that you were
I
telling me
did. Yeah. I
about?
worked in Alaska for in a fish processing plant. Yeah. I apparently like getting dirty, I think, but now I have a little bit of a cleaner job where I get to work with individuals and organizations on their public speaking communication skills, which is really wonderful.
And that's essentially why I wanted you on, but I didn't even really know how to put it into like one category when I was thinking about having you on. Like part of me was like, oh, the humor lens and the improv. But then really it was also like leadership. I just see you as so much of a leader and leaning into your fears and being able to help people, like you said, even with public speaking, that I was like, there's so many things there that I'm excited to talk to her about. So thank you again
Yeah.
for coming on and speaking to some of these things today.
Thanks. And often the term is applied improv. And when people think of improvisation, they think of just thinking on your feet and or performance. They think of whose line is it anyways. And yeah, that's part of it. I absolutely perform and I have groups that I perform with in the area, which is great. But applied improv is teaching people how to pivot when life throws you curveballs and how to overcome failure, how to build confidence, how to communicate and listen better. So it has some really applicable life skills that come with improvisation. And right now, corporations especially are hiring improvisers to come in and do a lot of team building, a lot of leadership training, because they're recognizing that the mindset of an improviser is so much more inclusive and innovative. It's a really exciting and awesome time to be an applied improv instructor because I get to work with so many different people in so many different avenues. And yeah, I really love it.
Oh, that's amazing. I actually have never heard that term before. And how you said it, something like it's how you can pivot when life throws you curveballs. I feel like it reminds me of communications major or sociology, something that like literally applies to everything in your life. And
Right.
this really can't. So this very much speaks to my demographic and our audience today. So I'm sure that's something that you'll be able to speak to as far as all these questions that I ask you. But just briefly before we get into that, what is it that you love most about your job?
Oh, I am such a people person. I am, if, I take all the personality tests, which is so funny, but every time I take those personality tests, it's like, you're just a people person. You love people. And it's so true. So that's what it's my favorite thing is meeting new people, learning about their life stories and just helping them feel most confident. So when I get to go in and train someone on whether it's on how to be better at presenting or how to just have a little bit more confidence in life in general or how to network. My favorite thing is watching their eyes light up and seeing them step into themselves a little bit and feel more confident. And that fills my bucket. And I just love meeting people from all walks of life.
Oh,
It's
that's
yeah.
amazing. Yeah, essentially I think that's what I love about my job too. Again, crossing over, there's so many parallels here. Ah, thank you for sharing that. That reminded me. Oh, I wanted to say I really love watching you in your element too when you're doing improv, like when you're on stage. I am so impressed by how quick you are on your feet and thinking of things. Like that is such a skill. And in some ways, that the equivalent is like me standing on stage naked singing. Like having to be that quick is just such a talent. I don't know how you do
Well,
it.
Well, I mean, some of the tenets of improv are the main theme of improv worldwide is yes and is the mindset of yes and.
Mhm.
And what that means is you take everybody's idea and you accept these ideas and add to them. And so it's not just you coming up with something, it's such an inclusive environment. So if you ever see somebody with a piece of jewelry or a tattoo or a bumper sticker that says yes and, you can be pretty sure they're an improviser. And that's just the idea of having that mindset of accepting everything and going with it. So it's not me being brilliant. It's really not. It really takes a team and takes a lot of trust and a lot of willingness to pivot. If you have an idea going on stage and somebody else has a different idea, it doesn't mean you abandon your idea. It means how do we meld this together to make the most, magic on stage? And so it takes practice. We have to practice improv, but it's the same thing with life. If you want to be able to think quickly on your feet, you have to practice it. And those are some of the skills that I teach.
That reminds me of marriage or any other relationship in your family. Like it's so much more about collaboration for it to be, I guess, for sake of sounding cheesy, like almost magical. And
Yeah,
that's kind of what you're talking about on stage. Am I understanding that right?
absolutely. Yeah. And, our motto in comedy sports, especially, is our four core values are inspiration, collaboration, gratitude, and fun. And I think those are awesome core values to have in life too.
Oh, absolutely. Well, if you don't mind, I want to ask you some questions about all of this. Do you mind if I jump right in and ask you about specifically your career and how it relates to our audience and how you can help them? Is that all right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Let's go for it.
Okay. So, first question I have for you is how do you help your clients, whether that's improv or teaching, consulting, whatever that is, all those realms that you're in? How do you help them overcome their fears and step outside of their comfort zone, kind of like we were just talking about?
That's a great question. Some of the things that I do, this sounds silly, but some things that I do is we play a lot of games for one thing. I like to make learning fun regardless. So we play a lot of games and sometimes we will do low stakes failure games. And what I mean by that is we will play a game that I'm going to make you fail at. You're going to fail at it. but I want you trying as hard as you can. Because what happens is when you actually play a game, or you have it doesn't even have to be playing a game, but you try something and you fail at it, what happens is your brain actually creates new neural pathways trying to solve that problem faster. So it's actually training your brain to work and solve problems in a faster way. So, and especially what happens when I play these games and people fail at them, they seem like they'll be easy games and they fail. And so they'll giggle and laugh. And I try and teach that we can just laugh sometimes through failures and through that uncomfortable feeling. And it's not as scary. So, as we get older, failure tends to be such a negative context. We try and teach that failure actually is one of our best teachers. So, don't be afraid to fail. You just have to try and continually try, and eventually you'll succeed. That's
Uh,
something that I do constantly to help people get out of their comfort zones.
that's such incredible advice. Like, laugh through your failures because they're your best teachers. I really appreciate that. That actually reminds me, I'm going to butcher this because I haven't listened to it for a while, but I don't know if you've ever listened to this TED talk that was about this guy that I think he had major anxiety and he just decided that he had to get like so many no's a day or like a year.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't remember. It
Yeah,
was
it's called,
horrifying.
yeah, Jia Zhang, I think is his name. 100 Days of Rejection is the TED Talk. And I actually use that a lot. It's a fantastic TED Talk if anyone hasn't listened to it. It's great for kids to listen to as well. I usually use the first 9 minutes of that TED Talk to exemplify what you can do, where he was really petrified to fail again and again and be rejected again and again. And his third attempt at realizing he just needs to stick with it, and his third attempt, he went into a donut shop and he wanted to get Olympic rings on the donut. And he was sure they would say no. And the donut maker took him seriously. And she went in and did it for him. And he was so touched, it changed his mindset. Sometimes you'll get what you want. You just have to go for it. So I
Yeah.
really like using that TED Talk, especially.
So glad you knew exactly what I was talking about and exactly where it is. So I'll have to put that in the show notes as well. Glad you brought that up. So then another question for you is how do you balance all of those roles that you have? Because I know you and you have many of those. That's mom, comedian, coach, consultant, teacher, all of those things while maintaining your own wellness.
That's an awesome question. Sometimes I'm great at it, and others I'm terrible. So, I mean, this week is a good example. Today's a Thursday, and Monday and Tuesday I had so many meetings, so many things on my plate. I wanted to make sure that I got a little bit of yard work done as well, and my exercise in, and they were just hardcore go 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 days, and they were awesome. I got so much done. My kids felt loved. It was really fantastic. But Wednesday came around and I was depleted, and so I had to take that day to just kind of recoup. I had to catch up on emails. And so some of my wellness comes from getting things done. And whether that is, when I say getting things done, sometimes getting things done is taking a nap, or I finally had the chance to shave my legs, or sometimes it's just the self-care, or it is getting things off my plate that have been niggling in the back of my mind. So I always feel better when I can sometimes physically take a break and sit down and relax. I'll watch a show, or get into a good book, and then get back into what are the things that are bothering me. Let me take care of those first. And I try and do those things that I really don't want to do so I don't have to think about them. And that's where my wellness comes in.
Yeah, I like that. That reminds me of eat that frog. I've mentioned that before, but doing those things that are kind of like nagging at you, the thing you're trying to avoid the most. I try to eat that frog, like get that thing done first so that I am not so preoccupied with that in the back of my mind sometimes.
That is so funny you use that phrase. I tell my kids that all the time. I read that in a book somewhere and it said, eat the frog first if that's the thing that grosses you out the most. And if you have two frogs, eat the bigger one first. And so I always
Totally.
say, eat the bigger frog, and then
Totally.
you'll be able to swallow the second one. Yeah,
Sounds like we're on the same page with that one too. I love it.
definitely. That's why we're friends.
I think so. She's amazing. You guys should meet her. So the next question I have for you is, and I kind of already asked this in the beginning, but what do you love about your career and how does it help you specifically as a parent?
Oh man, I love working with people. I love the ability to not know what is going to happen that day.
Mhm.
I'm really lucky in my job set that I get to work with so many different organizations and it always looks different. And so it's the same thing with my kids where, I get to teach them about confidence building and they get to see me in so many different capacities. And we often at the end of the day will talk about, what did we do today? And my day always looks different and they're kind of fascinated by mom just has all these different things that she does. And I think it's an example to them to know that you can balance your life in fairly healthy way. And I feel like it builds their confidence to see me feeling confident in what I do.
Yeah, I don't think until you've been talking to me, and I've talked to you about your job and the things that you've done a lot of times, but I don't think I've ever really understood that so much of it is about confidence and that it's you teaching not just kids but adults how to lean into that and to face their fears in so many ways. And I think that's one of the things I love the most about you is you are willing to do anything, things that would terrify most people. And you're like, let's do it. Let's jump in. How do you think, and this is another just side question, but how do you think you developed that? Because so many people run from that and you do not.
Right. I think it was because I've been doing improv for so long,
Mhm.
honestly. When you get to the point of facing your fears and you do it again and again, that's actually how confidence is built. So, a lot of people don't know the difference between self esteem and self confidence. If I were to ask you what's the difference, people don't really know how to articulate that. But self esteem is often built as a child where it's externally driven to internal feeling, meaning adults to kids will be like, you tied your shoes. You're so smart. Look at you working so hard on that project. You're somebody who is so kind, et cetera, et cetera. So they get all that external recognition and internally it's built. So it takes years and years and years to build self esteem. Whereas self confidence is actually the opposite of that. It's internally driven to an external result, meaning you have to be willing, if you're willing to step into that scary space and then you're successful at it, it helps you feel confident and bold enough to do it one more time and take a little leap of faith. And then you succeed at it. And then it helps you do it more and more. And because I practiced that for so many years, there's not a lot that scares me because I realize I'm not going to die. I can suffer through this. If I have to do this on stage or if I have to, approach this thing, it's not nearly as scary because I realize I'm not going to die. Physiologically, my brain might be doing the same things as feeling like I'm being chased by a bear, but mentally I can overcome it fairly easily. So
Oh,
that's
yeah.
something that has just taken years and years and years to step into the uncomfortable and realize, hey, it didn't kill me. I can do this again.
So I have to ask then, if that's the case, you don't get scared too much anymore through doing this. Have there been times when you've been completely mortified and super embarrassed as you've just jumped in and did scary things?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's what failure is, right? Where
Yeah.
I specifically remember I was at we call it World Championships in California and it was one of my first years of improv and I went with a team from Washington and I was just going to take classes and be a part of this big week-long conference, which I was really excited about. It was kind of an honor to be able to perform on stage and you're competing against other cities for this championship. And it was only my first year of improv and my manager said, "Karen, you're playing on stage tonight." And I was
Oh,
like, "What are you talking about?" I hadn't even brought my uniform. I was so petrified and just did not feel worthy to do it. I was so scared about it. And I went on stage and instead of leaning into the fear, I mean, I tried to have fun. I remember that I tried to have fun, but I went over that performance in my head for years. And I remember there were a few awkward moments where I just wished I had said something different, but it just had popped out of my head. And for years, I thought about it and beat myself up and was like, oh, I wish I had done it differently. And nobody else cared or thought about my performance again. Nobody else remembered. There were so many performances, it wasn't a big deal, but in my head, it was huge. And it was about 9 years later I went to the same conference and it just happened to be in the same city, in the same place. And yet I had had so much more experience with performance and with failure and overcoming that this time I had new people who had never performed on my team and they were petrified. And I remembered those feelings of being scared. And I was able to say, hey, let's go on stage and just fail. Let's have so much fun and feel so big that nobody will forget us. And I was able to kind of calm my group down and we went on stage and just killed it. And it was so great. And we had people saying, that was amazing. It just blew me away. And it was really good vindication that I had for myself. It
oh,
was really wonderful. But yeah, definitely had those experiences where I was like, wow, that was really mortifying, but I didn't die. That's what I've learned is just to keep telling myself that, hey, I got it. No big deal. Move on. In the grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal.
I love how that's your bar. I didn't die. Anything else is a win, and that's pretty awesome. And I actually wrote it down, redemption conference. Like if we could all have our own redemption conference. Like I've got this. I've learned so much. I've this whole time has been spent just leaning into my fears and seeing that growth as a result
Right.
of that. That's amazing. And I guess we do in our own ways. But that does tie to my next question, which is what advice would you give parents seeking exactly this to lean into their fears and cultivate their talents and passions while raising their family?
I would say just do something. That's something that my husband he's such a great mentor to me, but I can remember a time when I was trying to finish my degree. I had a nursing baby and a young child at the time, and I just was so overwhelmed and so tired. And I was like, I can't do this. I have a huge research paper due. I can't. I'm done. I'm not gonna get this. I'm just gonna fail. I'm so frustrated. And at the time, my husband was getting his PhD as well. And he said, just do something. You can't just not turn in a research paper, turn it in and get at least 50%. And then maybe your other assignments will still help you graduate and still pass this class. And that stuck with me because I finally was like, you're right. I'm just going to turn in something and get an F on it. I started the research paper and I got an A on it.
Oh, wow.
Because it wasn't nearly as hard as I made it out to be in my head. And so that is something that I have had as a mantra or as a constant thing in my head that I teach my kids, that I teach people who are scared is do something. Don't just not try. And, as parents, we're terrified that we're screwing up our kids. We all have our own neuroses around that. But if you are showing love and if you are doing what you can do, then you're doing great. You're probably doing better than you realize.
So many aspects of that that I really love, but especially how you said, just do something. I don't know if you ever listened to Jody Moore. Do you ever listen to her?
Don't.
Better Than Happy. Anyway, she's a podcaster and she says, just put out B work. And you're saying, even like, put out D work. It doesn't really matter. Just do something. It's the same kind of concept. And when I first heard that, I was like, no, 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 no. The perfectionist in me needs that A work. But you're right. Like, as a mom running on fumes, doing all these things, juggling all these balls, there comes a point in your life when you're like, okay, is this worth it? Everything that I'm putting into it, like is no longer serving me. I have to set some things down and it's enough. And then as you're able to set those things down, you realize like life is so much better on this side when you can let things go and surrender and just do your best. And like you said, you ended up getting an A anyway, but it was just setting something down essentially for you to be able to show up in a better way. Am I
Right.
understanding that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like the anxiety level was even more than my actual trying the thing out. And I think that happens a lot as parents and adults and workers, whoever. But yeah, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly, at least, right? So,
Absolutely. And you kind of hit on that too, with that anxiety part. The anxiety is often so much worse than the actual part of it, right? Or I forgot what you said that guy's name was, but that 100 days of rejection, same kind of thing. Like it was not nearly as bad as he anticipated it would be. And yet, most of his life, if I'm remembering the story right, he lived in that fear that it was just going to be so much worse than it really was.
right. And then he realized, yeah, it was fairly quickly, he realized that life and death feeling can go away. And instead, you just can lean into it a little bit. So,
So amazing. You shared so many wonderful little things with us today. Do you have any other quote or mantra or any final thought that you'd like to leave with us today?
my mantra is often the yes and mindset. Besides
Yeah.
the do something, that just having that yes and mindset. And sometimes I think people mix that up with that means you have to say yes to everything. And in a way, I do want people to say yes to everything, but that doesn't mean you say yes to the point of collapse or exhaustion. Sometimes saying yes is saying no to something else. I
Yeah.
mean, it's, sometimes saying, I should say that in a different way. Sometimes saying no is saying yes to something else, meaning, no, I can't take on that project right now. Instead, I'm going to go spend some time with a tea party with my 3-year old. That you're saying yes to your family rather than to work. So we say yes all the time. It's just what is the yes that we're saying to? I think about that a lot, have that mindset of of the yes and mindset. How do we work together and collaborate together to make just life better?
Excuse me, I'm going to butcher it, but Benjamin Hardy says something like that. Essentially, when we say no to something, it's clearing the path towards higher goals. So those lesser goals might be pushed to the side, but it creates that space for you to become more of who you're meant to become your better self, your best self, to lean into that. And that's essentially what you've been saying throughout this whole episode today is I'm just going to reiterate some of those things like the yes and then also improv or these things that we're doing, it helps us pivot when thrown some curveballs. Like we can lean into that and laugh through our failures because they're our best teachers and then just do something. So those are wonderful little wisdom nuggets, I guess we could call them, that you shared today. So I really appreciate that. And also, Karen, where can we find you? Like online or if people want to see you perform, all of the things, where are you?
Yeah, well, I perform with Comedy Sports Boise on a regular basis. We are actually in the process of getting a new venue, so it's a little hit or miss right now. But that's always, it's clean, family friendly. I love performing with that group. Everybody's so wonderful and welcoming. So I perform and privately, you can email me to get my consulting services to come into your organization, run team building. I'm often, next week I'm training at a Boise Chamber event for young professionals on how to network. And I'm always happy to come in and just help run whether it's team building or whether it's one-on-one public speaking training. A lot of people feel that public speaking training is the TED Talk, but actually, currently I have a big contract with a fairly large organization that I'm just training their development leaders on how to hold better meetings with their teams and how to give some of those PowerPoint presentations that are
Oh, nice.
very dull and improving in the sense of communication with the people that they work with on a daily basis. That's also public speaking. So, just email me for that. That's my private consulting business. And yeah, you'll see me in the community. If you're in Boise and Meridian, I'm all over the place.
Yes, that is definitely true. And I was just thinking about what you do. I'm like, oh, maybe other organizations could hire you. Like my calling in my church is gospel doctrine teacher. Well, even well before this, I've been very interested in teaching, but that is a skill that's like very much developed. And you just said PowerPoint presentations, all of those things can be so dull. So
Mm.
I'm very grateful for people like you that teach us how to improve those skills.
Thank
That's
you.
amazing.
Yes,
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of social media. I don't get on Instagram. I do have Facebook and I'm on LinkedIn, but
Okay.
yeah, really it's just kind of privately reach out to me and it's just word of mouth that has been growing my business.
Awesome. And I believe you gave me those links so that I can put them in the show notes. Is that right? Did you
I
have
did.
that?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. So I'll put that in the show notes. And again, thank you so much, Karen, for coming on and speaking to these things today that will very much help us become our best selves. So thank you again.
Thanks, Kendra.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was great chatting with you.
Hey, friends. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, chances are someone else would too. Would you take 30 seconds to share this with a friend who's looking for greater family fulfillment? And while you're sharing, tell me what you think about the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It refuels me when I hear this podcast is helping you. No matter what your house or your hair looks like, I'll meet you back here every Monday and Thursday morning for more episodes. Until then.